I'm Natasha Kirchak, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, it looks like U.S. President Donald Trump will finally be visiting Israel. The Jewish state is again blamed for airstrikes in Syria, and an Israeli fashion designer is becoming an icon among celebrities. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. It looks like May is going to be a momentous month for Jerusalem because U.S. President Donald Trump is coming to town, and he may have quite a few surprises in store. Even though the exact date is not official yet, Israel's foreign ministry says the official state trip is now in the advanced stages of scheduling. The stopover may be part of Trump's first foreign relations trip since taking office. He'll be in Belgium on May 25th and could come to Israel right after. That means he could arrive in time for the 50th anniversary celebrations of the reunification of Jerusalem beginning on May 23rd. Optimists hope that the timing indicates presidential plans to officially recognize the Holy City as Israel's capital. It's also worth noting that the last waiver postponing congressional calls to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem expires at the end of this May. Every sitting president has signed a 6-month delay putting off the relocation since the law was passed in 1995. Anticipation is already building because a prospective visit is part of a series of many unprecedented events. Trump has never been in Israel before, and no president has ever visited so early in his term. Further, the first foreign leader he hosted right after being inaugurated was Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So May could be one of the most exciting months in the history of the Jewish state. You'll just have to stay tuned at iltv.tv to find out. All right, there's been another explosion in Syria today, and unnamed regional intelligence sources believe Israel was behind it.
5 strikes reportedly blasted an ammunition depot used by Iranian-backed Hezbollah terrorists near the Damascus airport. An enormous amount of arms are routinely stockpiled at the facility after being unloaded from commercial and military cargo planes sent by Tehran. A Lebanese television station affiliated with Hezbollah says the attack damaged warehouses and fuel tanks but caused no human casualties. An Israeli military spokeswoman has declined to comment, but the country's intelligence minister Israel Katz took time out of his ongoing visit to the United States to make a statement. Katz confirmed that the incident is consistent with Israeli policy to prevent Iran's smuggling of advanced weapons through Syria to Hezbollah. He then reiterated that Israel considers any movement of advanced weaponry to Hezbollah units in Syria as a red line and will take any action necessary to keep them from reaching the terrorists' hands against the Jewish state.
Khaled Mashal, the chief of Hamas who is living in exile, has just reported that he plans to reveal an updated and amended version of Hamas's founding charter in the coming days. ILTV's Aaron Porras joins me in the studio with more. Aaron, what can we expect from this new charter?
Well, the changes have not yet been made public, but there's a lot of speculation as to what those changes might be. And let's check out my report and I'll tell you some more.
Hamas, which is an internationally recognized terror organization, wrote its founding charter in 1987. In it, Hamas states that Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. It goes on to liken the Jewish people to Nazis who commit atrocities without reason against the Arab people, and references the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, an anti-Semitic and fabricated text alleging a Jewish plan for global domination. Though it's not yet clear what will be different about the new charter, analysts predict the change will be in reference to the Jewish state within 1967 borders, or maybe it might remove the part about its ties to its parent organization, the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. On a side note, Hamas is also saying that it will not fall prey to Abbas's threats to cut funding to the coastal Gaza enclave. Abbas said yesterday that the Palestinian Authority was ready to make unprecedented financial moves to force Hamas either to rejoin the Palestinian Authority under Abbas's leadership or find a way to foot their fuel bills themselves. Just this morning, in response to Hamas's indignation, the PA notified Israeli authorities that they have stopped paying for the electricity that Israel provides to the Strip. From now on, Gaza will be reliant on international and private donations to cover the costs. Many speculate that the power and fuel crisis in Gaza, which was already recognized as a humanitarian crisis by international observers, will only get worse now, possibly resulting in a larger divide and more violence.
مع اشتداد أزمة الكهرباء والوقود في مستشفيات قطاع غزة وكافة المرافق الصحية، فإن كافة الخدمات الصحية مهددة بالتوقف خلال الأيام القليلة القادمة، مع تعذر أي بارقة أمل لوجود منح قادمة لإنهاء هذه الأزمة، الأمر الذي سيكون له تداعيات خطيرة على حياة مرضى قطاع غزة وكافة الخدمات الصحية المقدمة للمواطنين، وسيؤثر تأثيرا كبيرا على الصحة العامة في المجتمع الفلسطيني.
بالنسبة لموضوع غزة، هذا الإجراء الذي تم كما تعلمين هو إجراء مؤقت، وهو مرتبط باستجابة حماس لمبادرة القيادة الفلسطينية، والتي تحرص على عودة الوحدة ما بين شطري الوطن الضفة الغربية وقطاع غزة. هنالك مبادرة تم إرسالها لحركة حماس، نحن نعتقد على حماس أن تستجيب لهذه المبادرة وتنضم لحكومة وحدة وطنية، ونذهب إلى انتخابات رئاسية وتشريعية. هذا هو الحل الوحيد، لا حل إلا بحكومة وحدة وطنية وانتخابات رئاسية وتشريعية بعد ذلك، ومن ينجح يحكم.
Joining me today in the studio to discuss the environmental threat from the ammonia facility in Haifa, as well as the ongoing efforts to shut it down, is Knesset member and co-chair of the Green Movement, Yael Cohen-Paran of the Zionist Union Party. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Natasha.
All right, so let's begin by talking about the ammonia facility. Why is the Prime Minister trying to keep the facility open for another 2 years, despite the danger that it poses to society here?
Yeah, this is, something very new to us. It only, the Prime Minister Netanyahu just talked about it just a couple or 3 days ago. And this is quite obvious to me, very well, it's very concerning. It's very showing its connection to the owner of the facility, of the Haifa Chemicals, which is using the ammonia facility and doesn't want it to be closed in Haifa. And the owner is American. I have to say his name is Jules Trump, not connected to the president, just the same name. And we all know he's a billionaire. He's very connected to Netanyahu. I think he's donating money for him. And I mean, Netanyahu referring to him as a good friend of his. I think Netanyahu should really not interfere in this. It's outrageous. The Supreme Court has put an appeal, answered an appeal about it. And the demand is that the ammonia tank will be closed by the 1st of June 2017, in a month, in a few days. And this should be kept. And that was also the Environmental Ministry perception and decision till very lately. Now, because of pressure from the high windows, I think this is what we're fighting right now, and this is what we're facing. And I have to say here, the ammonia tank is a threat to nearly 1 million people living in the area, with all the threats coming from Hezbollah and Nasrallah using it, and he said it, I'm not putting words in his mouth, as his nuclear bomb, right, as his target, and this would be my nuclear bomb, and this is something really threatening the lives of so many people.
I think it's fair to say that people in the city are very concerned about this. This is not...
People in Haifa and in the metropolitan around Haifa are very concerned. This is something really unheard of, that the Prime Minister is interfering in such an issue.
Well, I guess, you know, the other side to it is that so many jobs will be lost when the facility is closed down, which is something that is of concern.
We don't want to see jobs lost. We know that there are options and there are alternatives, and there should be a facility that is operating in the south of Israel and manufacturing this ammonia. The problem is with the ammonia tank sitting in the heart of almost 1 million people. And there are solutions, and they should be met. And this is something we're saying from the beginning. We don't want to see people fired. I'm from the Zionist Union, you know. We care about people's life and labor.
So let's talk a little bit about some other major environmental issues that we're dealing with here in Israel. Can you tell us what is on the mind of your party more specifically?
Yes, of course. We're very concerned with the climate change effects on the Middle East and on us specifically, of course, but we will be affected also by generally the Middle Eastern changes. And we already see it. I have to say that with all the skeptics about Middle East, which I cannot understand because this is pure science, we see the effects happening now. It's not in the future, it's happening now. And we see that we have less water, We have a drought in the north of Israel where it's our water source. It used to be our water source. The Sea of Galilee would make, everybody were drinking from it. Now it's going down and down in the level, in the water level, and all the springs around there and the rivers around there are lower, the lowest water levels ever because of the drought there for 5 years now.
Now, this water shortage in the Middle East and Israel is something that is kind of affecting the region as well, obviously. This is a major issue, but not only will it affect Israelis themselves, it will also affect Israel's relation with the rest of the Middle East as well, correct?
Exactly. Look, what happened now in Syria, there's been a report about this 2 years ago, and it's so clear for me that there is such a direct connection between the drought that was there from 2007 to 2011. There were 4 years or 5 years of drought in Syria, and all the rural areas, all the people working the land had no water, had no food, and shortage of water. They moved to the city. That's what started the turmoil, and there are reports about it, serious reports about it, and this is something that has to be, people have to understand. The Syria issue is huge now, and the refugees is huge, and it's concerning all of the world. And it started from drought, it started from water issues. When you have shortage of water, and so many people in the Middle East, there are so many people, and it's creating a crisis. And this is inevitable, and this is something that will get worse and worse if we don't meet the climate change, the agenda.
So speaking about climate change, President Trump is slashing the Environmental Protection Agency's budget in the United States by a third, and he's even instructed the federal government to stop publicizing and sharing information that is documenting climate change. Now, how will this directly affect Israel, if at all?
Well, I'm very concerned with Trump's attempts to withdraw from the Paris Agreement and create a change in all the science around it in the U.S., and it will affect definitely the world. Because if the U.S., which is today the second largest emitter in the world after China, will withdraw from its commitment to meeting climate change goals, it's really going to affect the entire world and the motivation that the other countries have for mitigating greenhouse gas emissions. And we're very concerned, and I have to say that Israel and the Middle East, together after Africa, are this is the second area in the world that, according to scientists and experts, will be the most affected. And we, as I said, already see it and already affected by it. And what I don't understand is how can Trump change the course that the world has already taken from Paris and from before, but seriously, just from Paris from last year, to take a different route and to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. And this is completely something that I think that all of us and also around the world and in the US should be, mobilizing against it.
Well, and I think, Israel is a very small nation. We all know that we need to be protecting the land that we're on and taking care of it because...
And the effect it might have on Israel's security and strategic interest and all the very, very fragile area anyway. You don't need to add to it anymore. And I'm not saying that this is something that will, this is something that will add to the fragility and the sensitivity of the area and to the crisis that we're already facing here.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Knesset member, and we hope to have you back.
Thank you very much.
Israel has just reversed its controversial decision to ban an American researcher working with the Human Rights Watch group from entering the country, and he's now been given a one-year work permit.
Omar Shakir was denied the authorization 2 months ago after Israel's foreign ministry alleged the Human Rights Agency only serves as an instrument of Palestinian propaganda.
Israeli authorities denied us a work permit on the basis that Human Rights Watch was a fake human rights group that was engaged in propaganda masquerading as human rights advocacy. They subsequently let me in on a tourist visa back in March.
After the expiration of his 10-day tourist visa, Shakil filed an appeal. Jerusalem officials reconsidered the ban and dropped their objections. Shakil is now free to take up his position as HRW's Israel and Palestine director.
So our objective is to oversee and document human rights abuses committed by all the governing authorities, the Israelis, the Palestinian Authority, and Hamas, and Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. We've been working in Israel and in Palestine for nearly 3 decades. For the majority of this time, we've had free access to Israel and the West Bank. We've regularly had working relationships with the Israeli authorities. Gaza is a different story. Since 2008, we've only been allowed access to the Gaza Strip from the Israeli authorities one time. So the issue of access to Gaza for Human Rights Watch and more generally for human rights organizations continues to be a significant obstacle.
The initial ban against Shakir came under fire from Washington, which considers the New York-based rights group to be credible.
Everyone knows that Israelis are considered to be relatively outspoken and that the local press usually adopts a no-holds-barred attitude when reporting. But according to the latest edition of an international survey of freedom of the press, there's still a lot of room for improvement. The Reporters Without Borders annual report is particularly harsh on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It says he treats journalists like enemies and that he's been putting increasingly visible pressure on the media. The report also details allegations that the premier tried to exert control over the new public broadcasting station, as well as charges he made a deal with one newspaper for better coverage in exchange for curbing its competition. The report went on to condemn military censorship of details the country deems to be sensitive, as well as the army's treatment of Palestinian journalists. Overall, though, there's actually some good news for Israel as far as freedom of the press is concerned on a global scale. The country was found to be the 91st most free out of 180 surveyed, reflecting a 10-point jump in ranking. Reporters Without Borders also points out that Israeli media are free to be outspoken, which is very rare in the Middle East. A very thought-provoking exhibit has just been opened at the Tel Aviv Museum of Art, displaying technological solutions to housing crises after natural disasters.
Research shows that most shelters used in the past were soon abandoned by displaced people, since they didn't meet their needs. To show it doesn't have to be that way, Israel's Better Shelter Group is sponsoring the project with the UN High Commissioner for Refugees and the IKEA Foundation. Temporary shelters blending insight from architects, engineers, social activists, and others resulted with sturdy, lightweight quarters that can be easily assembled and shipped anywhere in the world. Some even include lockable doors, solar-powered lights, and USB outlets for the charging of electronic devices. The shelters can be adapted to serve as clinics or operation centers, and best of all, each one can be customized so families who may be stuck in them for years can recreate the semblance of a real home.
Unfortunately, we live in a world where danger could be lurking behind every corner. And while the dangers that leave us with scars are usually those that help define us, we don't always want those scars to be visible. Well, one Israeli company is taking on the challenge of helping us heal with a focus primarily on severe burns and chronic wounds. Joining me in the studio now is Gal Cohen, the CEO of Mediwound, to tell us more. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, this sounds really interesting. What has Mediwound created and how does it work?
Well, we have developed a drug that you can actually apply on a very severe burn, and after a single 4-hour application, topical application, at the patient's bed, this drug will remove all the dead tissue and will not harm any viable tissues. So it practically saves surgery, because today these patients that are in a very severe condition are going into the operating room, and the physician has no choice but to practically amputate their skin and therefore inflict another wound on the patient's leg, for example, to harvest skin and close the burn. With our product, you just apply a gel, you wait for 4 hours at the patient's bed, you remove it, and you're done.
This sounds not real. I mean, it sounds amazing. Can you, first of all, how does this work? What is in this solution? What have you created?
It's a biological sterile product that contains enzymes. And these enzymes that are derived from the pineapple plant, they know how to differentiate between dead tissue and viable tissue. So you practically apply it, they will only remove the dead tissue, and they will not harm any intact skin or any skin that was not injured by the burn.
So, I mean, obviously, when you are dealing with severe burns, this can be one of the most painful experiences in your life. Is the process of scraping skin, therefore, you don't have to do it at all? That's what you're saying? We
don't have to get the patient into the operating room.
Wow.
And the patient doesn't have to be under general anesthesia, which is not something good for the patient as well.
Absolutely.
And it's even more amazing when you have a situation of a mass casualty event. And it happened to be that a couple of years ago in Romania, there was a burn in a nightclub, and 154 young people were burned in a nightclub. We sent 2 physicians to Romania we sent Nexobrid, our drug, to Romania, and in less than 2 days, this is one of the physicians, by the way, in less than 2 days, he treated 39 patients. He practically saved Romania. And because of that, we have also an agreement with the US government. The US government invested $112 million to prepare the US for a mass casualty event, because countries are not equipped, they don't have the means to manage a mass casualty event. And the mass casualty event is not just 9/11, like the twins. It can be a fire in a nightclub. And look around, what's happening in Europe, what's happening in other countries. Countries need to be prepared. They don't have surgical capacity. They don't have enough surgeons. And with this product, you take a parking lot, you put the patients on the bed, you apply the product, you get the eschar off.
Now, I mean, this is truly unbelievable. And I mean, my first question for you is, obviously this can be used to deal with very severe wounds, but for somebody who just gets a small burn or a small cut from, you know, working in the kitchen, is this also something that's applicable? Can you take this home with you?
Currently, we went to the most severe wounds, which are burns that are very large in very severe patients that have what we call second and third degree burns. These are hospitalized in burn centers. But we are developing a second generation of the same product for chronic wounds, which is an epidemic, because in the world there are millions of patients with that. They are amputating more than 100,000 legs every year in the US because of a small wound we can't heal. And with our product, airstrikes, you remove this dead tissue within 4 to 5 applications, and you can save the patient.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really blown away by this. Now, you have recently completed clinical trials for Nexobrid. Can you share some of the results with us? Is a product now available for use?
Absolutely. This product is a drug, an innovative drug that was approved. And there are very few drugs that have been developed by the Israeli industry and approved. Now, half of Europe, half of the burn centers in Europe, all throughout Europe, they are using the product. You'll go to any burn conference in Europe, the buzz of the conference will be Nexobrid. It's the biggest breakthrough in burn care in the last 40 or 50 years.
I think it's also one of the biggest breakthroughs in the world. It sounds like you guys have created something that is honestly going to change millions of lives. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The next time an Israeli basketball coach wants to make a secret call in Hebrew, he'd better watch out, because former American NBA All-Star Amari Stoudemire is going to understand.
The 34-year-old athlete's been playing for the Hapoel Jerusalem team and living in the Israeli capital with his family since August of 2016. And even though he's not Jewish, Stoudemire says he identifies with African Americans who believe they descended from the biblical Israelites. While hosting a Hanukkah celebration a few months ago, he told Sports Illustrated that he's never felt more at home or more tied to a place than Israel. Off the court, the star players put away the basketball and opened up books on the Hebrew language. He just shared a photo on Twitter where he's seen studying the alphabet right next to an impressive Jewish menorah. In March, Amari Stoudemire was given the Martin Luther King Jr. Award in recognition of his philanthropy and leadership in building bridges between diverse communities. We all know how accomplished Stoudemire is at sports, but let's just see how good he is at saying that famous Hebrew ch sound. Trust me, it's not that easy.
Have you ever heard of a pop-up fashion shop? Well, thanks to one Israeli designer, they're becoming all of the rage on the world stage. If you follow the celebrity scene, you'll know that two of the hottest supermodels today are Gigi Hadid and Kendall Jenner. These fashionistas are now giving rave reviews of creations made by Israeli designer Nili Lotan on their Twitter feeds. The older generation will at least know Lotan's husband, beloved Israeli musician David Broza. All the fanfare over Lotan's flowing and beautiful designs inspired her to open temporary shops in the Soho and Tribeca neighborhoods of Manhattan. Another outlet's been opened in the rich and famous hangout of East Hampton, and Lotan's merchandise has even been reviewed by the New York Times. According to reports, she's taking her fashion show on the road, and soon lucky consumers will be able to check out her stock for themselves in Toronto, Brooklyn, Los Angeles, and Tel Aviv. But don't worry if you want to join the In Club, but won't be in any of those locations. You can always order online.
IDC Summer Ulpan, open for everyone.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Being a coastal country, Israel has no shortage of ports to visit, so our word of the day today is Namal, meaning port. In Tel Aviv alone, there are 2 ports, Namal Tel Aviv and Namal Yafo. Both, like most others, are beautiful places to watch the waves cast off into the sea or visit boutiques, restaurants, and parks. Some, like Namal Yafo, even have art galleries in the area. Remember, though, that the Namal is for more than just visiting. Adventuring out there is their main function. As famous artist Vincent van Gogh once said, the fishermen know that the sea is dangerous and the storm terrible, but they've never found these dangers sufficient reason for remaining ashore. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. The weekend is back, and you can expect clear skies and pleasant temperatures with a low tonight of about 59 or 15 degrees Celsius. Over the weekend, you can expect more clear skies and a slight rise in temperature that could get as high as 80 degrees or 27 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.64 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.